real pain points from the actual operation of grants programs. So Gitcoin has this awesome tool that they put out, which is the grants canvas. And it has a few, it's a nice little Miro board or mural board that you can use yourself. If you want to put together a program, I recommend start small, get a very simple objective that you want to do, and try out funding something. It's a lot easier to get like $5,000 to go and fund a few small grants. And if those grants work, double down on that, right? If you actually hit the outcome you were looking for, and then scale it, right? Because what we want to do is see, does this mechanism get the outcome we're looking for? And if it does, can we predict what will happen next? So if I put $1,000 in, I got 50% of the outcome or the metric I was gearing towards, right? Your key result isn't about did I hit the key results? It's about, are we moving directionally towards the objective, right? So I put in 1,000, I got 50% of what I wanted. Now can I run another round, and if I put in 2,000, do I get 100% of what I wanted, right? We want to see if we can predict. And if that result comes back that as we put more money into it, we actually get a higher return rate than the 100% return, this is almost like having virality in a marketing mechanism where your ROI is great, and now you can scale. You can say, okay, we can 10x the funding and get 20x the return. That's how you scale this up, right? So you wouldn't start a marketing effort by putting, $1 million into trying to get this one marketing message out there. You're gonna test 30, 40 mechanisms and then move forward. So if you're gonna do a program, use this and go through this define, design, and execute and learn experience where I've put here some of the things that are problem statements that we actually need to solve at every level of this program. So, in the funding mechanisms, one of the things Juan pointed at was we need an on-chain mechanism that then distributes to the other programs. I call this meta allocation. So how can we use meta allocation where it takes in the input of all of your states of the world to then allocate funds to specialist-driven funding to further programs? And there's always this democratic balance of expertise and high context versus everybody has a voice, right? And the way you solve that is by delegating authority to expertise when it's appropriate, but still leveraging the input of everybody for what the state of the world is. Another one is in the design phase here, eligibility criteria is so important, and you have to have somebody review this, right? So right now, I heard in the Filecoin ecosystem, we have 50 badge people. As you scale and your economy grows exponentially, it becomes very hard to keep up the training and resources. So how do you gain insights from what those humans are doing, label things properly, and turn it into more automated mechanisms that can scale the human recognition and capabilities? So it's really important for us to learn how to scale that type of system. And even on application and timeline things, one of the things I think is really interesting is we do this, here's your grant, good luck, right? Not, here's your grant, you are now a partner of our ecosystem, and here's what happens, the next amazing stage that happens if you're successful here today, right? So we don't create partnerships. It feels more like, here's your grant, don't screw it up, right? So how we work with them in designing these programs could be more continuous over time. I think at the executing stage, how do we empower community-based flagging of problems? How do we design appeal systems and common law systems so that you're not actually calling out the teams, you're calling out the process, right? So it's a super important thing in democratic systems that the other people that felt the other way, because remember, in democracy, pretty much 50% of the people are wrong 50% of the time, right? And you have to disagree and commit. So how do you, in that environment, create the legitimacy in the systems that you use to decide what the eligibility criteria are and how you flag potential fraud in the community, how there's sanctions that are graduated, to make sure that there's appeal systems. All these things that exist in like governance that we know need to exist here and need to exist on chain. So there's just, like, if you want to go to town as a builder, there's probably like 100 things you could build in a month that would substantially impact the quality of our ability to deliver grants on chain, right? From real experience of things that happen in Gitcoin, our delivering 22 rounds of funding, $6 million, every one of these rounds had these same problems, no matter which mechanisms we were using. Right? And lastly, in conducting retrospective, I think that's a lot of what we saw with the data and counterfactual reporting. But I think there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit here. One of the things I love about the Allo protocol idea is that you have a data substrate that you can build any mechanism. You can build futarchy on it. You can build outcome-based funding, whatever it is. And it gives you a data substrate then that you can build tools that will work on Filecoin's version of, retro funding, the easy retro PGF that was built for optimism. There were multiple mechanisms. There's a thing called grant ships, an evolutionary grant scheme built in Arbitrum. And they all use Allo protocol because a lot of times we self-reference how we evaluate impact. So we say, what was the best grant that came out of this education program? While we missed that the best education grant we did came out of this other program that wasn't the education one. And what we actually need to do is look across the breadth of the many programs we've run to find out which mechanism ended up funding the best education program, not which was the best education grant funded by the education program. Right? So all these retrospective opportunities are here. I'll share the slides, so if anybody's inspired to just pick up one of these problems and work on it, you can. And reach out to me anytime for clarification on what we could build and what we could actually use.